What if I told you there was a family in the heart of Montana whose very blood carried a secret so dark that science, faith, and fear all refused to touch it? The year 1876. America was still young, still raw, and the shadow of its grand mountains, shadows of another kind, lingered. The Donnelly family lived where civilization thinned into wilderness. A log farmhouse standing against the wind, surrounded by acres of pine and silence. James Donnelly, his wife Margaret, and their 5 children, Thomas, Eliza, Samuel, Clara, and the youngest little Grace, were known to the locals as hardworking, private, and different. Not different in the way of strange habits or odd manners. Different in a way that people whispered about when they thought no one was listening. They don't get sick, an old neighbor once muttered. Not even the babies, never so much as a fever. Others swore they'd seen the Donnelly children awake in the fields at midnight, staring up at the stars, unmoving for hours. But the strangest part wasn't what the townsfolk saw. It was what they didn't. In over a decade, not a single Donnelly had been buried in the town cemetery. No coughs in the winter, no accidents, no stillbirths. In an age where death was as common as rain, the Donnellys seemed untouchable. Humans fear what they cannot explain. And in the Montana highlands, fear has teeth. The winter of '76 came early and brutal. Snow swallowed the fence posts, and nights dropped cold enough to freeze water in the pitcher beside your bed. It was on one of those nights, December 14th, that the first sign appeared. At precisely midnight, Thomas Donnelly, the eldest son, woke screaming. Not the way a child cries from a bad dream, but a deep, tearing howl that clawed through the walls of the farmhouse. His parents rushed to his bedside and found him staring, eyes wide, at the ceiling. "It's calling me," he whispered. His breath fogged in the air, even though the fire burned hot. Margaret clutched him. "What's calling you?" she asked. Thomas's gaze didn't shift. The ground. By morning, Thomas seemed fine. But James Donnelly wasn't. His eyes darted to the floorboards whenever no one was looking. He didn't speak much at breakfast, and when he did, it was to send Thomas to the barn for the day, away from the house. That night, the second sign came. Eliza, 15 years old, was setting the table when the plates rattled. The whole house shivered, as if something massive had struck it from below. She froze, listening. The sound didn't come again, but she swore she heard a low, slow breathing, coming from the earth itself. When you hear something you're not meant to, you start to wonder, what else have they been hiding? The next day, James rode into town. He went straight to the library, a small room above the general store, run by an old Civil War veteran named Eli Carter. James pulled out an atlas, then an old mining record, then another, older still. His lips moved as he read. Finally, he asked Carter a question no farmer should need to ask. "Do you know where the old shafts are? The ones no one talks about." That night, James didn't come home until the moon was high, and when he did, his boots were caked in black dust, not snow. The days grew stranger. The Donnelly children began waking at odd hours, gathering in the main room without speaking. Sometimes they stood at the windows, faces pale, eyes fixed on the same patch of forest. Grace, the youngest, started humming a tune no one recognized. Soft at first, then louder, until Margaret would have to clap her hands to break the trance. And then January 12th came. Some endings arrive long before we see them. That morning, Margaret lit the stove and found the firewood damp. She called to Thomas to fetch more from the shed. Minutes passed. Then the scream. Everyone ran outside. Thomas was on his knees in the snow, clawing at the ground with bare hands. His breath came in sharp clouds, his fingernails ripped and bloody. Beneath him, the snow had melted in a perfect circle, exposing black, wet soil. There are moments when the world you know begins to tilt. And once it tilts, it never stops. For the Donnelly family, that tilt began the day the children smiled together at something no one else could hear. James didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table, a lantern burning low, an old rifle across his knees. Margaret sat opposite him, eyes fixed on the door. Every few hours, a sound would ripple through the floorboards, not loud, but deep, like the echo of something heavy moving far below. By morning, the children were gone. Sound cue, silence, and sudden loud knock. The parents tore through the house, calling their names. No answer. Outside, fresh snow stretched in every direction, except for a trail of bare footprints leading toward the treeline. James followed them, his boots crunching in the ice. The prints were small, delicate, all 5 pairs. They led not into the forest, but to a small rise just beyond the property. The snow there was gone, replaced by a black circle of bare earth, steaming in the cold, and at the center of that circle, a hole, perfectly round, perfectly dark. James shouted into it. His voice didn't echo. It just disappeared. By noon, the town was there, neighbors, the sheriff, even the old librarian, Carter. Ropes were tied, lanterns lit, and 2 men volunteered to descend. They were miners, used to the earth's darkness. But when they reached the bottom, they found no tunnel, no chamber, no children, just more black earth, packed and warm, as if something had closed a round eye. That night, Margaret began to pace the house, muttering to herself. At first, James thought she was praying, until he heard the words. Not prayers, not English, not anything he recognized. Her voice dropped to a low hum, the same one Grace had been singing days before. Then, at exactly midnight, the front door opened. No one was there. No wind. No snow. Just a sound, faint but clear, of breathing from the direction of the black circle. James felt it then, not fear, not grief, but understanding. He knew what had taken them. And worse, he knew it wasn't finished. The next day, he returned to Carter, the librarian. He spread the old mining maps out and pointed to the spot where the hole had appeared. Carter frowned. There was never a mine there, he said. James shook his head. Not on record. Carter hesitated, then fetched a locked box from under the desk. Inside was a single ledger, older than the town itself. It spoke of a shaft dug in 1823, abandoned after 12 men vanished inside in one night. The locals had called it the breather. Carter whispered. They said it takes people not for food, but for something older. James returned home before sunset, determined to burn the black circle, to seal whatever it was. But as he approached, he saw them, the children, all 5, standing in the yard. They didn't move. Their eyes were black, pupils swallowing the color. Their skin was pale, almost blue, and frost clung to their hair. Margaret ran to them, but James caught her arm. That's not them. The children smiled again in unison. Grace spoke first. It's warm down there. The others nodded. Thomas tilted his head toward the circle. It's waiting for you, Father. James backed away, rifle trembling in his hands. Margaret broke free, running to embrace Grace. But when she touched her, the child's skin was ice. Her breath formed no cloud in the air. The ground beneath the family shuddered. Snow slid from the roof. And in that moment, James knew the circle would not close until it had them all. The wind howled. The lantern light flickered. And then, in one terrible, soundless instant, the ground swallowed them. House, family, everything. By morning, nothing remained but a fresh layer of snow. The circle was gone. The earth lay smooth and untouched, as if it had never been disturbed. Some say the Donnellys moved away. Others, that they're still down there. And if you walk those fields on the right kind of night, you might hear it too, the sound of the earth drawing breath and waiting. This was not Montana's only disappearance. There's another, deeper, older, and far worse. Stay with me and I'll take you there.